outside of a town called Goldfield, which, if I were to guess at the population of Goldfield, a couple hundred. That would be my guess. I do know we're at the International Car Forest though. In keeping with our theme of taking you guys to extremely random and unique places, I think this one fits the bill. So aside from just taking you guys to completely random places, what brings us here to the International Car Forest? Well, Busi and I on our way, on our road trip to Reno. Run It Up Reno, happening this weekend. It's already started. Looking forward to it. I've heard so many good things about Run It Up Reno, and Jason Somerville, I know, is kind of a bit of a hero. He's been creating poker content that's been pretty lighthearted, pretty entertaining, but you know, still brings some of that strategical aspect to it as well. And he's found that balance, and he was pretty much the first person to do that appropriately, I think. Trying to find a way to block some of this wind. It's a little bit difficult when the van doesn't have any windows. We'll see if placing the camera there is any good. Anyway, poker. How's poker been going? Not great. Definitely not great. Last time we spoke on the vlog, I think I was down maybe 5,000 or 5,500 over the past handful of sessions. We've gone the same direction and continued that downswing. I've played maybe 3 more sessions. Played at the Bellagio, a couple times at the Wynn, and lost every session. Still on a losing streak. Been dabbling in online poker a little bit, and was losing there too, although I did book a win last night. So maybe that's the break of this down streak, but overall, maybe in the neighborhood of like a 10K downer over the course of like a week and a half or 2 weeks. And it's tough for me to sort of like really find a lot to talk about when it comes to these sessions, because I really don't want to just spend a lot of time talking about like bad beats and stuff, and I feel like nobody really wants to hear those. It's good to, like, you know, sort of get them off your chest a little bit, but at the same time you don't want to just dump that on somebody else, and when there's nothing really that valuable to be gained from listening to it. I do know that some people like sort of hearing that a professional goes through the same things that they do, and I can understand that. I mean, I remember when I was, you know, struggling in my earlier years as a professional player, and hearing about the downswings of other players, how that sort of made me feel a little bit more normal about my own downswings. So I get that, but at the same time, you know, I try to stay positive and I try to not dump bad beat stories on people. I can give some examples, you know, of things that's going on. I've run kings and aces a couple times. In another hand, I sort of posted about this on my Instagram page, but I flopped set under set versus a player who didn't realize how many decks we were playing with. Believe it or not, that's true. Because the flop was ace jack 7, and we got it all in on the flop. This player was playing literally every single hand, and after we got it all in, he said he was worried about me also having pocket aces, and his friend said that's impossible, there's only one deck. And he said, well, I didn't realize we were playing with only one deck. So that's pretty classic. In another hand, there was 2 early position limps. I'm playing 2-5 at the Wynn, which is a 1,500 cap and plays pretty close in size, I think, to the Bellagio 510, especially when a lot of people are straddling. So 2 limps from early position. I look down at 7-8 of diamonds. I raise it up to $30. The small blind calls and the second limper call. So 3 ways to a flop of jack 3 deuce with 2 diamonds. Action checks to me, and I think I bet $60 here. Small blind puts in a check raise. He makes it $200. The limper folds, and I make a pretty standard call with the flush draw. Turn, I think, is the 6 of diamonds. It brings in the flush. So when he checks it over to me, definitely want to go for some value here, so I bet $225. If he happens to have a set here, happy to let him draw. If the board pairs, I think I would just check it back here in this spot on the river. For sure, value betting, pretty standard bet, $225. He thinks for a little bit, makes the call. River puts 4 to a straight on the board, and he checks it over to me again, and I feel pretty good about my flush, so I go ahead and bet $575 here on the river, and my opponent goes into the tank and is a little bit sick, I guess, with the way the hand has played out. Says it's kind of a gross situation, kind of hems and haws for a while, and then he makes the call. I show my hand and he shows Jack 10 of diamonds. So I guess I have to wonder if there's actually any value in betting the river there. I put it to my poker friends, and they said that they are for sure betting the river there, so that makes me feel a little better. But it's just this thing over and over again, and that's the way things go when you're in a poker downswing. It's just hand like this after hand like this, and they come back to back to back and fast and furious like this. So that's the way poker's going. It seems to happen maybe once every 2 years or so. I have a stretch like this where it's just bad situation after bad situation. I did make the best of a bad situation at the meetup game this week, Monday. There was a straddle on the button, again playing 2-5 with a $10 straddle on the button. Early position raised to 50. I look down at pocket kings in middle position and I make it 150. Folds back to the initial raiser, who checks his cards and then puts in the 4-bet to $475. And I'm a little sick with the situation. We're about $2,000 effective, and probably due to me running this bad, I decide, for I think maybe the second time ever in my poker career that I can remember, decide to fold pocket kings pre-flop. This time my opponent shows pocket aces, so managed to lose somewhere near the minimum there, and could have been $2,000 down the drain. Of course, maybe I would have won the hand, who knows, but somehow find a fold, pocket kings versus pocket aces, and pretty happy about that one. All right, that's poker. That's the way poker's going. I'm here with Busi. She's in the car. She's taking some, not in the car, but she's here at the International Car Forest with me at the moment. She's taking some photos. Let's get back on the road. We're heading up to Reno. Looking forward to getting there. Snowboarding tomorrow, I think. Poker after that. Guys, I don't want to hear a single word about this ridiculous sunburn, okay? Not one word. Alright guys, poker is underway here at the Pepper Mill in the thick of Run It Up Reno. We're playing 3-5, no limit hold'em, and there's no max buy-in. I buy in for 1,000, but there's some deeper stacks on the table. Just in for 1,000 though for now. So some action to be found in the second hand that I'm dealt in here. So in this hand there's a $15 button straddle on. The under the gun player makes it 50 to go, and I look down at ace queen of spades just next to act. A little bit too early to put in a 3-bet here, too early position from early position open, so I go ahead and flat call. And there's 3 calls behind me, so we're going 5 ways to a flop here. King 7-6 with 2 spades. The initial raiser checks, and since we're this multi-way, I decided not to bet. If it was heads up or maybe 3-way, I would put in a bet here with pretty good equity, but I just decided to check, and the action checks all the way through. Turns an offsuit 10, so we add a gutter to go along with our nut flush draw. Action checks all the way to the button, who puts in a bet, but it's a pretty small bet. He bets $50. The initial raiser calls, I obviously call, not going anywhere, and there's one call behind me. River's a pretty sweet card. River is the 9 of spades, so we end up with the nuts here. The under the gun player checks, and the player behind me checks out of turn. I announce to the dealer that I haven't done anything yet.
I haven't done anything.
But the player on the button doesn't hear me. He goes ahead and he bets $300 out of turn. The dealer did hear me, however, so the dealer knows that action has not advanced beyond me. That being said, if I go ahead and check, the action is forced to stay as it is. That $300 is in the middle. It stands as a bet, so obviously I'm going to go ahead and check there. Check over to the bettor who puts out that $300. Under the gun player folds, and it'll look pretty obvious if I bet too large here usually. So I'm obviously going to put in a raise, but I just decided to min raise. Click it back over to him, put in the raise to $600 because I obviously don't want him to fold, and it looks super strong when I check it over to him, knowing he's going to bet and then put in that raise. So check raise to $600, and my opponent shows 10-7 of spades before deciding what to do. Interesting decision for him here, but he ultimately decides on a call. That 10 high flush, a little bit too good to just fold to the min raise, I guess. Nice pot right off the bat, second hand dealt in, scooping a pretty good one here. Next hand here, we've moved off of the first must-move table and onto the second table. I buy the button in the small blind after missing a few hands. There's one limp, the hijack makes it 20 to go. I look down at 8-7 of clubs, and I just go ahead and flat call, and the limper calls as well. So 3 ways to a flop of 6-6-4 rainbow with 1 club. I decide to check. Action checks over to the raiser who puts out a bet. Kind of smallish bet, that's $25. Kind of like a raise here, even though I'm going to have a lot of gutter balls here and a lot of straight draws with a check raise and not too many value hands. Still like a check raise a little bit just because he bet on the small side and we have 8 high. I can barrel away on some good turn cards such as some clubs. I have 2 overs plus a gutter ball. So I put it in a check raise and I make it 70 to go. Player in the middle folds and the initial raiser calls. So not really liking the situation that much because it seems like he's got something decent here. Probably is not going to float with like a king high, king queen, king jack, something like that. Minimum ace king, but probably better than that. So when the turn comes an offsuit queen and we don't pick up any more additional equity, I just decided to sort of give up here. Like I said, if the turn was a club, I might barrel, I might continue the aggression, but offsuit queen, I just check and the initial raiser checks back. River doesn't improve us either. Still done with the hand, I check, and my opponent puts out a bet, done with it. I go ahead and fold. On to the main game, the third table of the evening, officially in the main game now. I look down at 5-6 of clubs from early position. I don't mind raising these suited connectors from early position, even though it's much easier to play these when you're in position. I feel like there's the deception factor when raising them from early position. So I go ahead and make it 20 to go. There's a middle position call and the button raises to $65. We're pretty deep here. We're I think somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe $1,500 to $2,000 effective. That's not a very big 3-bet, and some suited connectors, happy to see a flop when we are this deep. So I go ahead and call, and the player in middle position calls as well. Flop comes pretty good for us, 7-6-4 with 2 hearts and 1 club. Action checks over to the button who puts out a bet. He makes it 120 to go. I would love to check raise this hand, and if we're heads up, I think I'd pretty much always check raise here and just go ahead and just go with it. Even if my opponent has an overpair, we are in very decent shape. And there's got to be some fold equity since this flop should help us, should hit our range pretty hard. The problem is there's a player in between, and if I go ahead and jam it in there or put in a raise, it's going to kind of suck if the player in the middle decides to go with it too, because he's pretty deep and he's going to at least have some sort of flush draw, combo draw. And I'm not too sure how good my hand would do against that sort of a hand. Or if he has a set, or if he flopped a straight, then we're also not in very good shape against that range either. So I just decided to flat call here with the middle position player being in there, and that middle position player folds. So we're now heads up to a turn card. Turn comes an offsuit 7, which is not that good of a turn card because now our 2 pair outs might not be any good facing an opponent with a potential overpair. So when I check it over to him, my opponent bets $165. Don't love it, but don't hate it too bad because that's not really that big of a bet considering the size of the pot. I don't think I can just fold here, even though I'm out of position and unlikely to have the best hand at this point. I still have a lot of outs to improve versus an overpair. I don't think it's super credible for me to check raise here with the 7 pairing. Seems somewhat unlikely for that card to have helped us that much. So I decide on the flat call and see what the river brings, and river helps us. River's an offsuit 8, so we end up with a straight. Don't want to check it over to him because I think he's just going to check back the vast majority of the time since the flush draws missed and the straight draws got there. So I'm going to lead here. I lead out for $350. Don't want to go too big, even though I think you can probably polarize a little bit since flush draws missed. I'm trying to get paid here. I want to get some value. I want some value for my straight, so $350 it is. My opponent thinks for a while, and then he decides on a call. So that's good news. I flip it over. My opponent looks frustrated and mucks. So good result there. Maybe could have won more. Could have won the maximum with a check raise on the flop if he just decided to go with it. But that could be a little bit results-oriented thinking. Not exactly sure. Again, wouldn't want to get it in with the player in the middle in that situation, but can't complain too much. Pretty happy with this one. All right, one more interesting hand here. There's a straddle on. Middle position player raises to $50. I like that at pocket kings, second best hand ever created, so time for a 3-bet up to $160. Folds back to the initial raiser who makes the call. Heads up to a flop of 10-7-4 with 2 diamonds. Pretty good flop for us. No ace on board. Always looking to dodge that ace with the pocket kings. And the board isn't too connected either. So when my opponent checks to me, I pretty happily bet $180. My opponent check raises. He makes it $400 to go. I look back at my hand and I do have the king of diamonds, which is kind of a negative in this situation because that removes ace king of diamonds, king queen of diamonds, king jack of diamonds. Any of those combinations which could have the king of diamonds in it removes a bunch of those and weights his hand a little bit stronger. So I don't really love the situation that much, but it seems like it's a little bit too strong of a hand to just fold to that check raise. Could have pocket jacks, pocket queens, and still could have some various combinations of some drawing hands that he's trying to apply some pressure with. So don't want to give it up here. There's been a decent amount of action on the table, so I go ahead and make the call. We see a turn card, which is an offsuit card. I'm not exactly sure which one, but I think it's an offsuit 6. Shouldn't change too much, unless my opponent happens to have like an 8-9 of diamonds type of hand. He's only got about $500 left, and when he jams it in there, I don't think we have too much choice now. Flush draws have missed. Still have a very strong overpair, and just not enough money in this situation, in this stack to fold. So I toss the 1 chip in, signify the call. River's a brick, doesn't change anything, and my opponent says some nice words. He says, "You're good," and shows us pocket 9s. Turn my hand over, and we're scooping in a big one. We have some run good. We officially have some run good in a poker session. Much needed. Looks like night 1 of Run It Up Reno has treated us pretty well in this 3-5 no limit hold'em game. Wrapping up the very sunburned session. Day 1 of Run It Up Reno. Day 1 for me. It's actually like day 3 or 4 or something. Hopefully it's the start of good things to come, but who knows. We're playing a tournament tomorrow, the main event of Run It Up Reno. Maybe we'll run good in the Run It Up tournament. That'd be nice. Either way, back in the cash games if that doesn't happen, and some good cash games to be found here at the Pepper Mill. Uncapped 3-5. Pretty fun stuff. All right, off to bed. More poker tomorrow.